Hi, this is Kristen, and welcome to our final Grit and Growth Mindset lesson. It has been a great year with these great new lessons, and I'm so excited today because today I get to interview a friend of mine and somebody who I think really embodies what I think about when I think about the growth mindset, when I think about grit, and when I think about mindfulness and just a positive outlook on life. So today I'm going to be talking to Craig Kennedy, and I met Craig, gosh, probably over 20 years ago when we were waiting tables together in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, just living out our ski bum dreams. And I think a lot has changed in both of our lives since that time. But I'll go ahead and just introduce Craig and let him tell you a little bit about his story since I met him quite a while ago.
Thanks, Kristen. It has been a long time. We met, this was my 23rd ski season here in Steamboat, so it was about 23 years ago. So we've known each other a long time. Thanks for having me on. I sure appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, my story kind of starts, like I said, I moved here 23 years ago. And usually what I tell people is that I moved here to be a ski bum, and I'm kind of still a ski bum. I love it here. Skiing is the greatest sport on the planet, if you ask me. And now, instead of standing up, I do it sitting down, and I'll explain exactly what that means. So 21 years ago, I just had my 21-year anniversary back in March. I had a skiing accident here in Steamboat. I was waiting tables up on the mountain at a restaurant called Ragnar's, which is a restaurant that you have to ski to. And skiing down, I pretty much always took the same route down the mountain. I had my favorite place that I went. And as I passed under the gondola, I decided, I was going to try something different this day. Almost 200 days on the mountain, and I had never actually skied this one trail called Vertigo. So I traversed across to this trail, which was a steep groomed run, one of the steeper trails on the mountain, actually. They don't actually groom it very much anymore, but I was just doing big GS turns down this trail, and at the bottom where it kind of flattens out, there's a cat track or a cat road, and I went to catch some air off this road, and my feet came right out from under me. So what I tell people is kind of like stepping onto an ice rink in a pair of sneakers. So it was frozen solid. My feet came out from under me, and I went flying. Ironically, the last thing I remember was the kind of the bright orange blur of a slow sign that I passed. And as I lifted into the air, I blacked out, and that's kind of the last thing I remember of actually skiing. And what happened was, like I said, I lost my footing, and I went flying. And I had a backpack on, had all my shoes and my gear from waiting tables. And well, it did a lot of damage. I also think that it kind of saved me a little bit because I went flying and I landed on my back. By the time I was done sliding, I was about 200 or 300 yards from the point where I took off. At least that's what Ski Patrol told me. And when I woke up, Ski Patrol was there. Luckily, I was just below the Ski Patrol hut. So I woke up and Ski Patrol was there. And the first thing I remember was them asking me, "Can you feel your legs?" And of course, I said, "No, actually, I can't feel my legs." So that's kind of really the start of the story and the start of one of the major changes, both for good and bad in my life. Um, I always get a little out of breath when I tell this story, so
I
bear
bet.
with me here. But at that point, they took me down the mountain in one of those red sleds, which are really not very comfortable. Took me to the local hospital, do some tests and some x-rays. And from there, they put me on a plane out at the local airport and flew me down to Stapleton Airport. This was long before DIA was around. And from there, I took a Flight for Life helicopter over to Swedish Hospital, which is attached to Craig Hospital, which is actually one of the best rehab hospitals in the country. So I was lucky in that fact. But I broke 9 vertebrae that day. I had never broken even so much as a pinky. To be honest with you, I'd cracked a rib once, but never any broken bones. I guess I figured I'm going to do it right the first time. So I broke 9 vertebrae that day. I spent a long time in the hospital. The first 3 days I was in ICU. And to be honest, they told me afterwards they weren't sure if I was even going to make it. But I spent 3 days in ICU, and it was just really just a blur of doctors' voices and lights overhead, and them having me sign things or consent to things because they wanted to do all this different stuff. And I remember a little bit of that, but basically I lost that 3 days. And then I spent about 9.5 hours in surgery to repair the broken vertebrae. They put a couple of 10-inch steel rods, 3 hooks, 6 screws, and whatever else in my back to kind of brace, excuse me, to brace around that break. Pardon me. And so 9.5 hours of surgery, 3 days in ICU, and then a day and a half in recovery. I finally woke up, and my mom and my dad were there, my stepdad was there, and a couple of good friends. My PT was there. And I'll tell a quick, funny little story, just kind of lighten the mood. My dad loves telling this story because when I woke up, my PT, her name was Gina, was sitting right next to me. And she looked at me and she said, "Hey, Craig, I'm Gina. How are you feeling?" And I looked right at her and I said, "Do you have a boyfriend?" And
That's the
dad,
Craig I remember from
yeah.
back in those days.
So my dad at that point tells me that's when he knew I was going to be okay. So
That's awesome.
I always like to tell that story. But, so I'm laying in my hospital bed after all this time and surgery and whatnot, and recovery. And the doctor comes in to check on me. How you doing? I'm like, yeah. What do you mean? How am I doing? How do you think I'm doing? I'm laying in a bed, paralyzed, can't move my legs. And he wouldn't really give me a prognosis. I said, what's the deal? Am I paralyzed for life? Will I get feeling in my legs back? What's going to happen? He's, well, we really don't know. And I couldn't accept that. And I wasn't okay with them not knowing, so right. I said, tell me, give me something, give me anything, is it going to be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? When will I actually know if I'm going to be all right? He said, well, all right, well, give it a couple weeks. And, if you still can't move your legs, I want you to know that you might be in a wheelchair for a long time. I said, great. That's all I was looking for at that point. Just kind of something, to gauge what I was doing and where I was going to be. So, of course, for 14 days, I laid in my bed staring at my toes and, just willing them to move, because I had heard stories about people going through similar things and actually walking out of the hospital. And so every day I counted down those days and tried to get my feet to move, tried to move my toes. And when I woke up on that 15th day, I had to make a decision. And to this day, I call this the toughest decision of my life, because I really had to choose whether I was going to be happy or whether I was going to be miserable. And that's just putting it bluntly, but those are your two choices. Which road do you take, right? Mm-hmm. Down this road is darkness, unhappy, miserable. I was just never like that. In fact, a few weeks before my accident, I had kind of had this shift in mindset, if you will. And I don't know if I had read something or talked to somebody. And when somebody asks you, "Hey, how you doing today?" And your stock answer is, "I'm fine. I'm all right." Yeah. But that's just a stock answer. You're not even really thinking about what you're saying. It's just coming out.
Right.
So I started to make an effort to tell people when they ask me, "I'm doing great, doing fantastic, I'm awesome," and it was noticeable, the difference not only that made for me, but the difference it made for other people. Because you say, "Oh, I'm fantastic," and they're like, whoa, what's wrong with this guy?
What's he doing?
Or I want some of that. I want what he has. So I kind of started that process. And so when I had the accident, and had to make that tough decision, that day came around, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be all right with this. I'd always been a positive person. And, now that I not only have to be positive for me, but I felt like I had to be positive for Mom, my dad, my family, and my friends. And everybody else that was around me. I felt like I needed to be strong for them. So that's what I was going to do.
And
And go ahead.
where do you think that kind of that optimism and that positivity, had that always just been your natural way of being, or do you think you learned that from somebody, or um, have you ever given that thought where that mindset comes from for you?
I have thought about that, and obviously it has to be how I was raised, the people that I was around. I think a lot of it had to do with, I just moved from upstate New York, which,
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, was a beautiful place. I lived in Lake George, New York, which is gorgeous, in the Adirondacks. But I tell people I had 650 good reasons for being in Steamboat. That was 300 days of sun every year and 350 inches of snow. And
I
I
love
was changing my life. I was in a place where everybody was happy and having fun, and partying, and just life was about having fun.
right.
And so I attribute it,
That fit for you.
yeah, of course, a lot to my family and my friends, but a lot to the place where I was. So, I mean,
Hmm.
we lived in Steamboat for a long time. It's an amazing place with great energy and great people and amazing things to do and outdoor therapy every day, if you will, because there's so many cool things to do here, winter, summer, spring, fall. That I think that had a lot to do with it, and I think deep down, this was maybe just who I was, and I just hadn't found that person yet.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I imagine you've shared that many times. It's interesting, that response, like that physical reaction when you talked about being out of breath, that just telling that story brings up. I think that it really makes sense in terms of a lot of what we're learning about the stress response and what we've been teaching our students about the stress response in our brain and how that's linked to our body in terms of that shallow breathing and all of that occurs. So I can see it makes sense for all of that to happen when telling a story like that.
I was saying I had already had that shift. I was positive and needed to be positive for everybody else. Um, but in your new injury, it's really this like deer in the headlights syndrome where you're just like, what the hell is going to happen to me? It's not
Mm-hmm.
even a mindset of what am I going to do. I had to go from who's going to take care of me,
Mm-hmm.
which is a scary thing. I'm 23,
Yeah, you're
young.
just out on your own.
I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anybody to take care of me. In fact, at one point, after a few weeks, my mom randomly says, we were having a conversation about this exact thing, and she says to me, well, you could always move home and I can take care of you. And I just kind of went, uh, no,
Yeah.
I don't think so, Ma. That is the last thing I want. I mean, I love my mom, and she
Right.
raised four kids. I give her a lot of credit.
Nice of you
And
to offer, but
yeah,
yeah.
thanks for the offer. But at the same time, that wasn't just a question that scared me. It was a question that spurred me to say, okay, let's go from who's going to take care of me to how will I take care of myself, and
Right.
to eventually where I am today, I can do anything I want.
Right.
People talk about, oh God, Greg, I feel terrible. You're confined to a wheelchair. Well, I got news for you. Take the wheelchair away, you'll see what confined really is. With the
Right.
wheelchair, I can do anything, go anywhere, and I do. Sometimes a lot more in a day than most your average people do.
Yeah. Can you
Uh,
talk a little bit about everything that you do?
Absolutely, man, it's been a long road. After my injury, I went to work for the Sheraton here in Steamboat, just answering phones. I just wanted to get back into the work world. After a year or so, being really more of a people person, liking to be around people, I moved out to the concierge desk.
Mm.
And after about 8 months, actually was promoted to the chief concierge. So I was actually running the concierge desk. So at that point, all the people, the activity providers around town are like, well, you got to come try this. You got to come dog sledding, hot air ballooning, snowmobiling, all these things. We want you to try this so you can sell it to other people.
Sure.
And I kept saying, well, I'm in a wheelchair. I don't know if I can do that.
Huh.
And, that was the attitude I had because that was still a new injury. This was a year and a half post injury, and I didn't really know. So they encouraged me, come out, we'll figure it out. We'll try it. Okay.
Hmm.
I did all those things. I went dog sledding. I rode a snowmobile for the first time. I went hot air ballooning, um, dinner sleigh rides, did all kinds of cool stuff. And that was kind of the start of me kind of getting out of my comfort zone and starting to realize that the wheelchair wasn't something that was going to hold me back. It was just a different way to get around.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the
Something
start
new
of
to
my
learn. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was the start of my work. Not too far after that, a spa called the Soul Day Spa opened up at the Sheridan, and I met the woman who was going to own it, or who owned it and was opening it, and she approached me about being her front desk manager. We had a relationship because she stayed at the Sheridan a bunch, and I booked massages for her and things like that. So I moved over to the spa as the front desk manager, and within a year, I was the spa director. I did that for about 2.5 or 3 years, and then that was right around the time that I met Andy, my current wife. We've been together for about 17 years, married for 10. Realized that we both really had a passion for traveling. She was working at a travel agency, so she could travel more, and I wanted to travel more. So we started traveling together not too long after that. In 2000, was it 2000? Let me think about this. 2002, she bought me a ticket to Alaska for my 30th birthday. And that was that wasn't our first big trip together. We went on a road trip first, but this was our first flight together. And we did tons of research, asked questions. Everything was, oh yeah, everything's accessible. Don't worry. Of course, we got up there and found out there were a lot of things that weren't accessible. Mm-hmm. So we decided when we came back that we were going to write a book with accurate information on where people with disabilities could travel. So that's how we got the idea to write and publish our first book, which was, and we started our company, Access Anything, at the time. So this was my next job. I left the spa, started this business, Access Anything, with Andy, and the first part of our business was to write a book. So we sat down and wrote our book. It was called Access Anything, Colorado Adventuring with Disabilities. And it was not just how to travel, but it was adventure travel for people with disabilities. So we highlighted all the big cities, the small towns, all the adaptive ski programs, summer programs. There was a place we found in Aspen that you could actually paraglide if you were in a wheelchair. And I just started really opening up the world, like, wow, there's some amazing things out there. So for 10 years, we ran Access Anything. We published a couple of guidebooks, travel books. We traveled around the country speaking on traveling with a disability, on adaptive sports. We did the whole adaptive expo circuit and sold our books. And I mean, it was an amazing, amazing time for us. We traveled and traveled and traveled. And that was kind of the road to independence and running our own business. So fast forward a few years, most recently, I spent the last 8 years helping to run and grow our adaptive program here in Steamboat called STARS, or Steamboat Adaptive Recreational Sports. And we're really proud to say that we took that program from a $16,000 budget winter program, about 300 lessons, to today where it's about an $850,000 budget, year-round programming, close to 5,000 lessons. Helping
an amazing program.
About 600 clients a year at this point. They've bought a piece of property that they're developing. So it was an amazing thing. I left that job last April. Today, as we sit here talking, let me see if I can name all the things that I do. I started a disability life coaching practice. So I've started working with other people with physical disabilities, kind of they're going through the same thing I am, to help them through the tough stuff. I don't have a degree in counseling, but I certainly have a master's in wheelchair.
Absolutely.
After 21 years in a chair and experiencing all the ups and downs and the emotions and the trials and the tests and everything that you go through. I also am in network marketing, I'm proud to say, which is the best job I've ever had. I work with the Juice Plus company. So I call myself it's the health and wellness industry, basically. I'm a whole food nutrition and business coach, helping keep people get healthy. I also travel for a buddy of mine out of Chicago. He runs an organization called Open Doors. And we train disability experts for the airlines, for the airports. We train frontline staff on handling customers with disabilities. We train what they call below the wing staff. So the people down on the tarmac, the baggage handlers. That's also really meaningful work for me. I get to travel, love travel, and on a bigger scale, helping people with disabilities make travel easier and let them know that they can travel almost
Right.
anywhere in the world these days with a disability if they have the right information and they're taught the right skills. So that's kind of that's
The
all I'm
big,
doing right
the
now.
big, that's all. That's it. Come on.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a big piece of your life, particularly since the accident, has been giving back and helping others. And I think when we talk to kids, we talk a lot about ways to deal with stress and adversity is to either to make meaning of it or to find ways to that what we realize is when we give to others, either through random acts of kindness or other ways of helping, it feeds our soul. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what all of those things that you have done in terms of giving back has done to help your recovery and help you bounce back from your adversity?
Absolutely. In fact, I tell this story a lot. When I was in college, you're in college, and by sophomore year, you have to declare a major. And I just didn't understand why. I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. And I was at school. More than anything, I was learning how to be social and make friends and have a good time. And studies were important to me. And so I had an advisor tell me, he asked me a question. He said, "Why are you so worried? Just think about this. If you had all the money in the world and you didn't have to worry about money ever, what would you do for free? That's what you should be doing." So I thought about that, and the best I could come up with was I want to help people. I didn't know how or in what way, but I know very much that I'm here to help other people. That's my number one goal in life. And my job with Juice Plus, they teach you a lot about working on yourself, personal growth. So I've been working on that for the last couple of years as well. And the biggest thing so far that I've taken out of that is exactly what you said. It's not about what you get in life. It's about what you give. And, if you give without expectation, for no reason at all, and help other people, you give unconditionally, whatever you need in your life comes back to you. That's just, it's a paradox, if you will. It's very paradoxical because it doesn't make sense to people. Less is more instead of more is less is more. So for me,
Right.
it's really helped me be a well-rounded person. It really fills you up, fills your heart. It's it completes you, if you will. And for me, people look at me and I tell people how lucky I feel. They're like, "You're in a wheelchair. Why do you feel lucky?" I said, "Look at all the people that are walking that are so much worse off than me. There's a lot of people out there that have it much worse. People with cancer, people with terminal diseases. I have a really good quality of life. I'm married to an amazing woman. I have 3 or 4 amazing jobs. I work for myself. I travel the world. What do I have to complain about? No, my legs don't work. I'm not a great soccer player. Staircases are kind of a nemesis.
You still
I still
ski,
ski
what,
100 days a
100
year. It's
days
my
a year?
favorite thing to do. And I ski just as good or better than when I stopped. I ski the steep stuff. I ski the double black diamonds, the chutes, the trees, the powder. I ski it all. The only limitations are the ones that you truly believe that you have. And that's a big part of what I work on every day. So for me, it's without that piece, I'm not a whole person.
So we've been talking a lot about grit in our lessons with the kids and kind of just this combination of persistence and perseverance in the face of adversity. And certainly that seems like a quality that you have embodied. And I think a big piece is allowing yourself to get outside your comfort zone. And certainly you've had to push yourself outside your comfort zone quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
so I mentioned earlier when I was in the hospital about that tough decision and which road to take. It's, to be honest, it's a lot easier to be unhappy and miserable. And even though there's always, if you think about it, there's always a lot more positive things going on in the world in your life to focus on, people tend to take those couple negatives and focus on those and really
Sure.
let it drag them down. So, funny enough, how apropos, yesterday morning, I was to get done working out, and I was talking to a buddy of mine in the locker room, and he looked at me, he goes, he's not a buddy, he's just somebody, he's an acquaintance, he doesn't know me that well. And he's like, how you doing? I was like, fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
how are you? Right? That's still how I roll. And he said, I gotta ask you,
Yeah.
how the hell, it always seems like you're in such an amazing mood. How do you do that? It's not just something that happens. I'll be honest with you, I work at it every day. I listen to podcasts, I listen to, if you guys have never heard of Wayne Dyer, man, this is a guy that really hits home with me, and I listen
Mm-hmm.
to him almost every day. I listen to something from Wayne Dyer. He's just such a positive role model. So I work at it. I work really hard at it. It's not easy to stay positive all the time. It's not easy to turn any situation around and look at the positive. Oftentimes people are saying, well, this and this are going on. I'm like, well, yeah, but look at it like this. And
Yeah.
that's years and years of practice to stay positive. So I have to remind myself
Mm-hmm.
every day how lucky I am to be independent, to have the
Mm-hmm.
life I have, to stay positive. I really do. And the things for me that hit home are, I'm passionate about skiing, and I'm passionate about helping other people. Steamboat's a perfect place to do that. I'm also always have been determined to show my friends and family, and not only them, but the rest of the world, that this isn't going to beat me. You fall off the horse, you get back on.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's heard that phrase. But to being passionate and determined to move through life and keep moving forward in a positive direction. Again, not an easy thing to do, but that's what I focus my life on. There's always a bright side to any
Yeah.
situation. The strongest people in life, I think, will take any situation, good or bad, and make something positive out of it. Something bad happens to you, instead
Mm-hmm.
of letting it drag you down, stop and think and meditate on it and ask, why did this happen? I'll be honest with you, first 6 or 7 years in the
Right.
wheelchair, I put on a good facade, told people I was happy and positive, and deep down, I guess I wasn't. It came back to bite me. I was angry. These are all
Mm-hmm.
things that I had to work on. Um, but, you know,
Sure.
moving forward, trusting and allowing life to happen and move forward, again, is a hard thing to do, but these are the things that I focus on, kind of focus on the journey instead of the destination, because the destination is way out there in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows how long you're even going to be around? So have fun every day. Like I said, focus on the journey instead of the destination, because the journey is the fun part. You make too many plans for too far in the future, and you get lost in those plans, and maybe you get disappointed when they don't come true or they don't happen. So the only thing I'm worried about
Mm-hmm.
right now is today and maybe tomorrow. And when it comes to the following day, I'll deal with that. But people get, I think, too caught up in the big picture and where's my life going to go and how am I going to pay this bill and what's going to happen. As I build
Mm-hmm.
businesses, money's been tight, things have been tough, but you look back at those times and you think, well, that was just a time in my life. It was a necessary step on the road to get to where I am now. And so these are all the things that
Mm-hmm.
I think about on a regular basis.
And that all of those that answer is so rich in everything that we've been talking about, from focusing on the process to what you have to do to offset that negative bias of your brain with those little things you were talking about. It's not easy to be positive. That's something we have to intentionally do. And even creating that habit of how you answer the question, how are you doing today? I think, I talk a lot about, when's the last time somebody asked you how you're doing and you didn't say, oh, I'm busy, I'm
Or
so
life's
busy.
crazy, or
But
oh
really
god,
putting that positive.
every once in a while
Yeah.
you regret asking somebody that question. Hey, how you doing? And then you back up
Right.
and you're like, okay, here it comes, right? So, I don't
Yeah.
ever want to be that person.
Yeah. Just little things. Yeah. It's great. It's such a really a rich answer. Um, so the last thing I just wanted to ask you is how has what does mindfulness mean to you, and how has that played a part
Oh
in your
man,
journey?
mindfulness is so many things, big and small. If you want to know the truth, it comes into
Mm-hmm.
play, excuse me, really every day, and every moment of your life. If you really pay attention, if you're mindful about your mindfulness, if you will, Um,
Yeah.
it's little things like, how often do people cut themselves when they're chopping vegetables? If you're mindful, you won't cut your finger. You know, my wife has a problem dropping her cell phone, cracking her screen, and I'm always reminding her to be more mindful. Where do you set your phone down? What pocket is it in? Is it in a shirt pocket when you're leaning over the toilet and it drops in the toilet? She hasn't done that, but
Right.
it's all the little things, all the
That's
little
happened in
things in
our
life
house.
that you need to be mindful about. It's also, I like to talk about listening to that voice, the intuition, whatever you want to call it. Um, you know, should I do something? Yeah, you should. And Andy and I have this mindfulness where we're leaving the house and she says, "You think I should get a sweater?" Like, you thought of it. You should grab a sweater. So mindfulness is,
Hmm.
I don't want to call it control, because control is not something I necessarily want to have over my life. But I think it smooths
Hmm.
everything out, in your day to day activities in life. If you're mindful about what you're doing, what you're saying, and how many people say negative things about themselves, such an idiot. Every time you say that, that enforces a
Hmm.
negative behavior or a negative condition within yourself that is hard to, yeah,
Or even
it's hard
think
to
it.
break.
Yeah.
So be mindful of what you say about yourself, how you treat yourself, how you treat others. Treat others with respect, and you'll get respect back. Even just being mindful about the look on your
Hmm.
face. Have you ever noticed how you can just go sit next to somebody that's in a bad mood and smile, and maybe they smile back? You know, being mindful about every
Yeah.
little thing. And again, it's
Yeah.
more being mindful about my mindfulness, remembering to be mindful. But I think
Hmm.
it helps you travel through life on an easier, smoother path, if you will. Does it make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I
Enjoy the
think,
journey, right?
life is a journey. We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, have today and maybe tomorrow and
Great.
past that, who knows? Be mindful, be appreciative, be happy, every day. That's my number one goal in life, is to be happy every single day.
Well, you exude that for sure. And I think anybody who's around you feels that. So
I
you're doing a
appreciate that.
good job. Um, Great. Well, thanks, Craig, so much for taking the time. And I think this is going to be so helpful for teachers and students and anybody who has the opportunity to listen to you and what you're bringing into the world. So I really appreciate you
You're
taking the
welcome very
time to do
much.
this.
You're welcome.